Happy Wednesday! So I have another video for you today, and that is a video request from a recent comment I got from user at K114 was like, hey, can you do a top 10? And like most people, they like to talk about, how they're prefacing this and all that jazz, but this was difficult. I have 3 honorable mentions and I have my top 10. These are not my highest rated books, these are my favorite books. And so I just want to preface with that. But we're going to get right into this, and then I'll give you my thoughts at the end, I think. So my 3 honorable mentions, and again, the honorable mentions, the top 10, they're really not in any particular order, to be honest with you. I like all of these books. These are definitely top tier books for me, in my personal opinion. Now, there's some parts of them I don't like, but I reread these books. I enjoy them highly. So, Changes by Jim Butcher, first honorable mention book. This is book 12 in the Dresden Files. It is such a phenomenal book. I really enjoy this book. Die Trying, Lee Child. I believe this is book 2 or 3 in the Jack Reacher series. One of the best ones, in my opinion. The action, the premise of it all, it's really, really well. You get to see Jack Reacher and very brutal and cold and manipulative and using all of his skills. It's a good book. The Fool's Run. This is the first book of 4 in the Kid and Llewellyn series by John Sandford. If you didn't know, John Sandford is actually the pseudonym that he writes under. His real name is John Camp. So, little fun fact. Now, let's get into the top 10. I don't have these in any particular order. I have a list here, and I was thinking, maybe I rank them. I struggle with that. So honestly, I gave up. Now, I could have many books by different authors on here, and I think I have a couple books by the same author on here. So that's not a shock to me. So if you know who it's going to be. But let's get into this. Good Omens by Terry Pratchett and Neil Gaiman. I think this was the 3rd book I read, and I was apprehensive about this because I've tried a Terry Pratchett Discworld book and I just didn't vibe with it. I'll probably try it again. But I thought, well, it's got Neil Gaiman too, so maybe I'll like it. It's great. And the funny thing, if you saw my, why you should read Neil Gaiman, most of this book's written by Terry Pratchett. So it's a great book. You should try it. The Paper Menagerie by Ken Liu. I was torn between this one and The Hidden Girl and Other Stories. These are both short story collections. And you're going to see another book of short stories on this list. I was torn between those 2 Ken Liu books. I thought maybe I had some recency bias with The Hidden Girl and Other Stories, but if I remember correctly, the highs in this one maybe were slightly higher than the highs in The Hidden Girl and Other Stories. So I went with this one. Ken Liu, again, I've read this one and the other short story collection. I want to get into the Dandelion Dynasty really soon. I am really enjoying him as a new author for me, so you should give him a shot. And this is a great way to start here. I get a lot of flack when people ask me, what's your top rated Stephen King books? There's a lot of decisiveness when it comes to King. King's my favorite author. But when it comes to Stephen King books, people get very decisive about some of the books. I have to have a Dark Tower book on here. And I have, 8 books to choose from. But my favorite Dark Tower book, and this is definitely against the grain, is Wizard and Glass. And a lot of people hate it. And I don't want to go too much into it, but people hate it because book 2 and 3 really start ratcheting up the action. You're on the quest. You're dealing with Blaine the Mono. You wrap up the riddle in the start of this book because you're left on the cliffhanger in Wastelands, and then you go into this huge backstory about Roland. and Susan Delgado, and it kills people. Just they don't want it. But it is such a good. King does coming of age better than any other author, period, in my opinion. Next book in my top 10, Last Argument of Kings by Joe Abercrombie. This is the third book in the First Law trilogy. What a ride. I have read every book that Joe Abercrombie has written in his First Law world, including the standalones. I think the Age of Madness trilogy is a better overall trilogy than the First Law trilogy, but this book for me is the best Joe Abercrombie book, period. I think it's fantastic. I told you there was going to be another collection of short stories on this list. Night Shift by Stephen King, his first short story collection. The short stories in here are so good. I mean, they're phenomenal. I mean, you can pick out so many. I mean, you have Jerusalem's Lot, Graveyard Shift, Night Surf, The Mangler. I mean, that was fantastic. You have The Boogeyman, Gray Matter. Sometimes They Come Back, The Ledge, Lawnmower Man, Quitters Incorporated. It was so underrated as a short story, by the way. Quitters Incorporated. I remember that specifically in this book. You should check that one out. And I also liked Children of the Corn. So, I mean, there's so many good stories in here. Cain and Abel, another new author for me that I'm starting to delve into. Cain and Abel is the first book in the Cain and Abel trilogy. I have yet to read the third and final book, but this is such a good story. You have two strangers from opposite end of the world. One grows up with a golden spoon in his mouth. The other one is just fighting for survival in a persecuted land. And lo and behold, as they grow up and grow in, and their lives cross, and you have this huge jealousy. It's fantastic. Ken Follett, The Pillars of the Earth. I've read this book 3 times. I've never enjoyed a 900-page book more that really is the premise is about building a church. And it's historical fiction. He writes that good. So, you knew this book was going to be on the list. Jurassic Park by Michael Crichton. I still, to this day, consider this the book that got me into reading. Senior year of high school, I hated reading. We had to read this for advanced biology. The movie had only been out for a year or two. I flew through this book. I don't know what it was. I knew I had to read it for the class, but I flew through and connected. And from that moment on, literally the following week, I was at a Barnes & Noble trying to buy books. I hated reading up until then. It's whatever it is, if I was just in the right mindset or something clicked, this is the book that did it. So this is always going to have a place in my heart. It is still, this year, the highest rated book I've read this year, 4.9. Definitely, I'm definitely biased to it, I'll admit, in terms of scoring, but I'm a hard scorer, and this is a 4.9 book for me. So, Dark Matter, Blake Crouch. This is a mind-bending book about how time travel is possible, and yet how, I guess, love transcends time. And it's done so well. Like Michael Crichton, he blends science into action and pace and thrill and intrigue to where you don't feel inundated and you're reading a textbook and you're actually enjoying it. So I highly recommend this. Andy Weir, Project Hail Mary. I think of all of the books on here, this is the one I recommend you read on Audible. The voice narration of this book is so flippin' good that I probably will never consume this book in a physical form because Audible is so good on this one. I cannot recommend it enough. So this is a fantastic story. It just drops you in, and then you slowly figure out what's going on, and then you, over the course of time, you get the backstory, and then you bring it up to the current and the characters. I got one word for you: Rocky. And finally, another kind of book that's hit and miss with some of the people that are constant readers, Doohickey. It blends so much a fantasy kind of eerie element with a guy's restart of life after divorce type thing, and magical crazy things are happening. It's only a story Stephen King could write. This is so underrated, King. I don't know why more people do not like this, and that's my opinion. Again, these are my opinions, but this is such a good book. Such a good book. I highly recommend this. So that's my list. I think I had 3 King books on here. I'm covering fantasy, historical fiction, thrillers, short story collections, which I had 2 on here. I mean, there's a lot to uncover here. You have some sci-fi. I mean, so in terms of my genres, in terms of my top books, these are the books today that I think are my top. I question some other books, obviously, that didn't make the video. You have Tolkien, pick some books there. Narnia, I enjoy Narnia. I don't have it in physical form anymore, but I've read them all and I enjoy those. So, I mean, there's a lot of classic ones I could put on here as well. So, but that's my top books. Again, at response to @K114, those are my top 10, including some honorable mentions. Again, they're not the books I rate the highest, but they're the books that I enjoy the most. So, hope you're having a great day. I will talk to you later. Thanks.